Just a
We'll
word.
catch up.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
Commissioner.
All right, we're up.
Nothing big.
Bannock County Commissioners are in session. There is one amendment to the agenda today. We're going to talk to elections. So,
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we accept the amended agenda.
we have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Our first item is ambulance.
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we enter into the Board of Ambulance.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it's a Commissioner's report on ambulance, just paying our monthly bills.
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we approve the invoices for the ambulance district and exit the ambulance district.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have Commissioners' reports and bills. I talked with Christie this morning. One item that caught my attention was $2,500 that we have our drone now. So this is our share of the insurance payment. And then the other thing that I kind of highlighted, I just asked for a little different description or better description. Our payments for the nonprofits or our commitments, donations for the nonprofits. Had it in here as a contract and I didn't like that. So we'll change those things. That was my highlight.
Do you want the revolving fund breakout?
Yes.
So we had $19.95 for ID badges, $68.88 for postage. There was $69 twice, and that was for prisoner transport. No, sorry, that was post. Tony and Alex to go to post. So that paid for the meals for that.
Okay.
And then on the road and bridge, Hampton in Boise, that was for 4 people to go to the annual road conference.
Okay. Yeah, when I went and talked to her, like the revolving fund, that's all it said. And I wanted a little more clear definition. Anybody looks at this report that they'd be able to identify what we paid for with those. And then the other invoices, I didn't have any concerns or questions on them either.
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we approve the invoices and other bills as presented.
Have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And next we have salary rate approval forms. I didn't have any questions on them. Anybody else?
No, sir. Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the salary rate approval forms.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that brings us into our work session. Dan, why don't you come on up? Maggie Mann's not here yet.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Dan Kendall, Facilities Director,
Ashley Ford, Maintenance Technician.
here for our monthly update. Snow removal has been the new thing. Been in 3 times so far at 5 a.m. and started that joyous work. All's going well so far with that. As far as building maintenance goes, the Lander building has been probably the biggest problem. 2 of the 3 HVAC units breaking down this past month, but we are band-aiding them back together best we can. But for as little as we use that building, we probably get more complaints from that building than any other. But doing our best to hold it together.
We need to get that on the market, whatever we need to do.
Who's still in there?
Drug testing.
Drug testing?
Yeah. it's a problem. We talked about the annex sewer line. It's sounds like it's about 14 feet deep. Jason Dixon and I were actually talking about liners so they can put inside of pipes. Maybe that could be an option we'll look into rather than trying to dig that thing up. It's 150 feet long from where it comes out of the back of the building to the city tie-in, so I think if we could find a different option, that'd be the best, but we'll see what we can figure out. I don't think it's hurting anything right now. The way it's, we just put out of order on the bathrooms in the basement, so it's just the floor drains that I worry about because that building does flood once in a while, so that water wouldn't have anywhere to go. So we'll look into that. The plumber that actually stopped by to take a look at it, he's the one that did mention that liner, and maybe that'd be something to think about. So
You can put liners inside the pipes?
Mhm.
It's called slaving the pipe.
yeah,
And they run a little mesh line through the pipe. They blow it through with air,
Mhm.
and then they push a little
Pig?
It's like a fiberglass resin
Mhm.
that they push through, and it coats that sleeve,
Mhm.
and it creates just this perfect little tube. And they can do amazing things with that. I think it's probably a no-brainer for a lot of our old pipes because it's pretty cost-effective for rather than tearing up concrete and digging and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They can go hundreds and hundreds of feet.
How thick is it?
It ends up being like a 1/4 inch thick.
And so, what about, I mean, you're reducing the diameter,
Just a little bit.
you know?
Why don't we look into that anyway, and maybe get a bid or something, see
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, there's all kinds of uses for that type of product. So.
okay.
Hmm.
Definitely look into it. We wanted to bring our new hire in today. We hired a new guy, and he's off today, but we'll bring him by next month and have you meet him. He comes from the world of storefront glass and commercial windows and doors and closers and that kind of thing, and already has been a huge help. I think he's going to be a good pick, and we had a lot of people to pick from, so it was nice. But I think we found a good one. So,
Good.
as far as projects go, Shanda's helping us get some of the bigger projects off the ground. The new boilers need some engineering. The annex needs some engineering, so she's helping us with that part of it. But we are starting to move forward for the cosmetic part of the annex, so like the D&B counter. Anita's picking out colors and what she wants and making sure it's going to function the way she wants it. So moving forward is on that stuff, so that's good.
We're just interested in colors.
Oh, yeah.
That's the first thing.
We don't
come out of
get-
your mouth.
We don't get involved with that. We'll never be able to pick the right one. So she's got the countertop colors, and she likes the colors of our new restroom, so she's going with that color for the wall, so that'd be good. 218, the courtroom got the certificate of occupancy, and the state will be here in January to hook up their recording equipment. So while we're waiting for them, we'll get that bathroom finished up for the jury room. That one's moving along nicely and should be done before Judge Jarman wants to move in.
I walked through it the other day, it looked very good.
Yeah,
Very
it's
nice.
going really well. It was made for it right there, so it's been pretty easy. So the juvenile probation project, the first phase is done, and the second phase will be done tomorrow and Saturday. The flooring guys wanted to work the Friday and Saturday to finish that one up, and then so the third phase, the big part, will start next week. And YDC's been really helpful, bringing the kids in. They take out the carpet, ceiling tiles, and throw all that stuff away for me, and they have enough kids that they don't take long. They do a good job. And
Good.
so Matt and Danny Tanner have been super helpful organizing that part of it. A lot of furniture to be moved, and they've been really good about that too. So the jail boiler, hoping in the next 30 days to be done. It's so close. I think the important stuff is done, but there's just a couple of problems, and every time they move ahead, they usually find a problem and take a step back and make sure everything's going to be right when they're done. So I think it's going to be great. I'm working with Christy a little bit and letting her know when things come up that insurance probably isn't going to cover, but things that we should have, so everything works properly.
So I listened to that meeting the other day, the Zoom meeting, and so do we have a running total of how much we spend or what we expect to spend?
I could pull one. We really haven't spent much. We paid a couple of utility bills that were higher that we got reimbursed for.
Okay.
And then we got reimbursed for one other purchase, I think, that the sheriff's office made. But for
Good.
the most part, we really haven't spent too awful much. I think there was an
Appreciate
expenditure last year.
you two and Levi for
Yeah.
all that you've done out there. That's been a big project.
Yeah.
I'd be glad to have it over.
Yeah. Levi was afraid to lose the $8,000 worth of chemical in the loop, so by spending $4,000 on those isolation valves, it'll help protect that chemical. So he had a pretty nifty way of draining it out into a tank and then circulating it back in and then putting those valves on, so we don't ever have that problem again. So he's on top of things on site for sure. He knows his stuff really well. And Star Corp's been doing great for having such a difficult project. I thought they've done a great job. So, I will submit the permit application for courtroom 320 in January as well. I just wanted to get 218 wrapped up before we opened up another permit. So I will get that submitted. And then the structural engineering for the east entrance is done. And now they're working with a civil engineer to get the final pieces of the vacancy of the street done. Because it really needs to be one package, not two. So I don't want to submit anything to you guys before it's all like one package so you can see the big picture. But I think it's moving along pretty well.
Good.
And Ashley was going to cover a couple things.
Hey, Dan,
Yeah.
before we go on, while we're talking about juvie over there, do you want to talk about possibly taking out that wall?
Sure.
Just, and not all the judges' wish
Sure.
lists for that door and everything, but just the simple thing of taking that one wall out
Yeah.
for those girls.
It's something we've talked about in years past. There's 3 clerks jammed into one little room. And there's a wall in there that creates a hallway that we don't really need. And it's a cinder block wall, and it's about maybe 10 feet long. It's not a structural wall, but it is cinder block. So we would propose that we tear that wall down, and I think it would really gain those girls, gosh, it'd be much more functional. You could probably fit 5 girls in there if you tore that wall down. It's just right in the middle of everything. But it would include, patching the ceiling back in and probably new carpet. Because when you tear that wall out, there's going to be a bare spot there. But as we move these people around, I would propose that we do that. And we could tear the wall down in-house. We just have to pay, maybe for the flooring. So maybe $5,000 be something to think about. I think it'd be well worth it. We've been talking about it for probably 8 years that it needed done. We just haven't never done it, but I feel that space is so full of people, you can't even fit a vacuum cleaner in there.
Yeah, you have to push the vacuum in and use the hose to just get whatever you can. It's bad. They're in there really tight.
Do you have capital acquisitions money
Mhm.
that you could use that for?
Yeah.
Do you know that space, that wall that we're talking about?
I believe so. I'd just like to walk over there and look, but I think it's something that we need
Walk
to
over
move-
and take a look
move
at it.
forward with.
It's,
If we're gonna remodel over there, let's do it the right way. That's just, we're not paving the road after.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
little hallway's dark. They don't really. There's a fridge back there, I think, but
yep,
it's
and then
still.
they'll move everything that's kind of back around that backside, they'll move over
Yeah.
into the little, what would be the conference room,
Mhm.
the old conference room. So,
Will be good.
Okay, Ash.
Okay, so the Historical Museum has had some water damage, and the restoration companies over there, they're removing the sheetrock that's been damaged, checking for mold and asbestos. let's see, they're gonna move the acoustic ceiling from the office area, replace that when it's done, and then when they're done with that, then we'll go and complete the lighting upgrade after they're all done with their restoration and fixing all that water damage.
What room was that?
The historical museum.
Oh, okay.
And then as far as the cleaning contractor goes, they've done really good with adding on the new buildings that we've done. They've been just get right in there and clean them. We've had a few just hiccups. He's hired a few more new people for his crew, and so he's in the process of teaching them. And I've had some offices reach out just to let me know some stuff that maybe they weren't sure that they needed to do. So as soon as I let Levi know, he addresses it immediately, and I've already had something this week. I think it was Tuesday that I reached out and let him know there was just a couple spots that weren't getting clean, and just overnight they were done. Just little stuff people miss, and every time I bring it up, they're right on it. So that's going really good. I think there's just always going to be some just learning curve for when these new people start, as he hires more people and gets them trained. But other than that, it's going really good.
Good. Good.
That's it for me.
Okay.
Questions? All right, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And we appreciate all of your efforts on the snow removal. That's a challenging situation, and we get that ice and people drive on it before you get to it. It's a challenge, but so thank you for all that you do there in the early morning hours.
Thank you.
We
Yeah.
do appreciate it.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas to you all. Maggie? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Brought Tracy Reed with me. Tracy, as some of you know, is our community health director, and she's going to share some information as well.
Okay.
I think I have 5 or 6 copies of these. Thank you. So I'm going to talk with you briefly about a new report that came out in the last 10 days or so related to maternal child health in the state of Idaho. And then Tracy is going to talk with you about some work that we're doing to help support maternal child health. So this is a report that's published by Idaho Kids Covered. It used to be Idaho Kids Count. I'm not really sure why they changed the name of their organization, but they did. But the data are a little bit concerning. We showed increases in Idaho in both our infant mortality rate and our maternal mortality rate. So the infant mortality rate is a death that occurs in any infant under the age of 1, and maternal deaths are any deaths that occur in women in the 365 days postpartum after delivery. And they exclude things like car crashes because that typically can't be linked to having delivered a child. But there are some kind of leading contributors to maternal child death. The first one is behavioral health related. So women dying either from suicide or overdose in the 365 days following delivery. Also, the next 2 leading contributors to death are postpartum infection and embolism. And all of those causes are largely preventable. And so we're working with partners in the area to try to figure out what are some things that we can do to help provide support to women in that 365 days postpartum to reduce the likelihood that those kinds of deaths are occurring. We're also taking a look at piloting some work in Butte County around well child checks, because access to health care in some of our more rural communities is really, really limited. And if people don't have a lot of resources, they aren't necessarily getting those well child checks in the first year of life that are recommended, that could potentially identify concerning issues early that then can be addressed in a more cost-effective manner. So just wanted to share this with you. There's a lot more information in it than just those 2 data points. They talk some about contributors to those increases, as well as they make some recommendations for solutions. Their recommendations are really at a higher policy level than where we work, and so we're trying to really focus on actionable things that we can do to help support women and babies in our communities directly. So I'll turn the time over to Tracy, and she'll talk a little bit more about that.
So I'm going to talk about child abuse and child abuse prevention and what we're doing at the health department to raise awareness. So here's some information. If you want to take one, you can pass it down. So the health department has been asked to be the lead on child abuse prevention. So I don't know if you know that April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And so we are going to partner with Bannock Youth Foundation, with the City of Pocatello, with your PIO, Emma. And she's actually going to talk to you about doing a proclamation for Child Abuse Prevention Month.
She has.
Okay, great. She's on it.
Oh, yeah.
So we're hoping to, depending on the weather, because last year we had a lot of snow on April 1st, but we're hoping this year that we'll be able to do an event down at the Lookout Point that will focus on child abuse prevention. So it'll be very similar to what we did for suicide prevention. So we'll ask our community partners to come, provide information and resources to families, and then also ask the county commissioners and the mayor to do a proclamation on that date. If the weather is bad, we're going to have to go to Plan B and find another facility where we can.
And I threw a wrench in your plan.
Yes, please.
When I talked to Emma about this, we have an amphitheater up there that we can utilize that
Oh,
facility.
Okay.
Instead of down here where
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a great.
we have seating, we have open area, we had a yoga deal there, and they
Right.
had booths and
At
stuff
the wellness
around there. and
complex.
stuff. So I just told her that something like that, we'd
Do
be
there.
more than willing
Okay,
to
yeah.
Okay.
utilize that facility. We want people to know what's up there,
Mm-hmm.
and we
Yeah,
have a lot of
that's a
youth
great
that
idea.
utilize that
Okay.
facility.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So,
We'll do that instead. 'Cause
well,
there's also.
she was going to bring it to you too.
Yeah,
So.
our next meeting is in January, so we're going to be meeting every month to discuss specifically what we want to do. We also, and I'm sure you're all aware of the pinwheel. So there's the pinwheel that is the symbol for Child Abuse Prevention Month. Last year that was a problem too, that because we had snow on the ground, so it was hard to put the pinwheels in the ground. But also too, there's the option of painting the pinwheels onto windows. So we're also going to be attending the Chamber Luncheon in February to request businesses to paint the pinwheel on their business windows. So that way too, just to raise awareness on the importance of child abuse prevention. And after reading Maggie's report, and then also the data that I provided to you as well about child abuse in our area, is just so important that we focus on that and raise awareness. And so I want to let you know too about a program that we have that can combat child abuse and also infant mortality, and that's our Parents as Teachers program. We've had this program for over 8 years now, and it's in each one of our counties in our health district, and we can do the visits in person or virtually. But we have home visitors that have been trained and educated to provide this evidence-based curriculum to families. And so it's a great program, and it's just another way that we can prevent infant mortality and child abuse in our area. In addition to, we have a health education specialist who's going to be visiting healthcare providers and encouraging them to screen women for postpartum depression. Because just like Maggie said, with maternal mortality, the number of deaths is also attributed to suicide. So we're hoping that providers in our area will screen women that come in after having a baby for postpartum depression and connect them to mental health resources in our community. So that's something else that we'll be doing, and hopefully that we can combat and we can make a difference. So any questions?
No, I've had experiences with
If
that
you
situation.
if you have questions, if you have a chance to look through the report, feel free to give me a call or email me. I'm happy to try to answer any of them. Again, a lot of the recommendations in the report are kind of state legislative fixes that we don't have direct involvement with, but there are things like the Parents as Teachers program and working with providers in our communities that can help hopefully get people connected to resources that they need.
Our legislative session's the end of, our IAC is the end of January.
Yes.
So that'd be a good opportunity.
And I will actually be over there for meetings at the same time. So I think we'll sit in on the Health and Welfare Committee meeting for IAC. Any other questions about any other public health related issues?
No, that's good stuff today. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Scott.
Good morning, Commission. Scott Crowther, Event Director, Business Manager. As we walk the path of the concert stuff and how we navigate this new world we're in, I think we've kind of bumped into a couple of issues, or an issue that I think that we need to maybe address and just talk about, and that is just our general credit card use policy. And so, on occasion, we have, there are times when we may be in violation of this policy due to, I don't know, maybe the nature of the business that we're working in, and it's specifically related to alcohol sales and purchasing alcohol. A couple of examples I would give of this might be, in a concert rider, we pay for the meal following the concert, and we don't necessarily place the meal. We just go and pick it up and pay for it, which we've done. And I don't always check to make sure, or do I talk to people to make sure they know they can't buy alcohol through that meal if it's purchased on a credit card, but we do provide them alcohol as part of their contract with us. So it's kind of an interesting area. Other areas may be if we have a promoter or somebody that we're interested in working with, and we go out to dinner and they order a drink and we buy that drink or buy that meal for them. That puts us again in kind of that violation of that policy.
And this is a Bannock County policy.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with statute or state or
So,
court.
the current Bannock County policy is no alcohol is to be paid for through the county. We did an exception already when we took over concessions where we can buy alcohol for resale.
Mhm.
But we specifically have on our purchasing card program, it specifically says a couple of things. You can't lend the card to anyone else to use. So if you have a card, if I have a card under my name, I can't give it to you to use. That is a violation of the policy. The next thing is alcoholic beverages. That can't be purchased with the credit card. And then like recurring charges. So we have a specific card for that. I think what we're here for today is to possibly make an exception to the credit card policy and maybe say for the Bannock County Events Fund, there may be a need to purchase alcohol at dinners. But I think we need to clarify the policy. It's never to be drank by employees. So if you have a vendor that you need to take to dinner, maybe we allow the purchase of 1 or 2 drinks, but I think we'd be very specific in the policy and say we'll provide an exception, Bannock County Events Fund only, and this number of drinks.
The other thing though is we do buy alcohol. We don't buy liquor. So we buy beer for the people that come as part of their rider, because we have, our license allows us to the alcohol for the beer, but not the hard liquor. So we'll do a buyout for the hard liquor, but we will buy beer that's not just for resale. So that might need to be clarified in there too, that we just, because we do
Give them
provide
some of
them
the
with
concession
alcohol.
beer.
Usually it's the concession alcohol.
So what I'd really like to have happen then is for you three to get together and have an event center policy. So that,
Well, I need to provide this form,
uh,
because this goes out to all, anytime you use a
Yeah.
credit card, you're authorizing, or you're saying you're not doing these things. So I think with on here, I need to make a quick revision and put, with the exception of the Bannock County events. And then we can do a policy above that.
okay.
I have a question. Could they have a different type of credit card, not with the rest of these credit cards, that's just for this purpose or not?
The credit card isn't the
Yeah,
issue.
it'll be okay.
Because right now, we've already, something has already occurred where alcohol was purchased on a county credit card. So it's not the card that's gonna deny it, it's if my office will process it or not. Because
Okay.
right now, my office will not process alcohol purchased through a dinner.
So your thinking is the best solution is simply carve out an exemption for this particular
Yeah.
case?
And I think we wanna be specific because we don't want any other departments to decide that they wanna wine and dine people.
Yeah.
So we just keep it specific to the Bannock County events, and then if any other exceptions come up, then they can be brought before the board and we can adjust it beyond that. But I would like to be as strict as
Yep.
possible.
And I agree.
I'm okay with that too. This is totally foreign world for us to be walking in to. So however, whatever rules, guidelines we want to make, I'm okay with it. It's still just trying to do business with people that have different expectations, I guess, than government does.
What do you got?
Oh, I was just suggesting if that's the policy, instead of changing it and maybe having some confusion, I don't know how hard it would be if, like, someone was out to dinner and like, look, we're gonna buy your dinner, but if you're gonna buy any alcohol, that's you separately.
And I think that's probably the direction to go. Which we could talk about. It is. I mean,
But it still comes back to the other part, that you're buying alcohol for the band or whoever,
But that
separate
would-
from going out to dinner or something like that. That's part of their contract that we've signed.
Yeah. the
So-
writer is what-
yeah.
Yeah.
So on occasion, and I have not, we haven't inspected like what are you guys buying in your post band meals. I can give you like an example. One band bought 55 hamburger combos from Red Robin with assorted whatever drinks. Even though we provide them with drinks, they bought assorted drinks. And I didn't go through that to make sure that was, we just
I
paid.
don't, nobody
Yeah.
told me that in any of those meals that were purchased, that there was any alcohol.
I don't ever
So I don't
remember
think
looking
I don't
on
think
that
that
one
has
as
come up
close.
until just now.
So,
But we're just getting into this field
Yeah.
ourselves as a county. And so I think that they need an exception to run this business at the standard that it needs to be run at. I mean, I don't want to be out there having a party for them. But there's a negotiation part of this and a lifestyle that, it may not be my lifestyle, but I don't want to critique somebody and say they have to adhere to my lifestyle every time they come into Bannock County.
I'm definitely open to suggestions on like how we navigate these things, because there's times when we're going to be the ones seeking out people. We're going to be trying to court people for the
Well, the writers too, we can negotiate those as well. Just
We
'cause
can.
It's a contract.
yeah, and sometimes the communication with the band is really good. Some bands, not at all. Some bands, we'd have very, very limited communication until even the day of the show. So
I don't want our regulations to complicate this program that we want to be successful in.
But we also have, so I have a credit card that's issued to me. We have a couple of credit cards that are issued to the event center to be used for events. And those ones, this would never even be an issue with those specific credit cards, right? I mean, really, you're talking about, probably the credit card that's issued to me would be the only one that would need, or that we'd want to make some exemptions to, and if we, and even at that, like, I don't necessarily like the idea of just open bars, open tabs, that kind of thing either.
No.
So, it's
We're
gotta
not-
be
we're not
pretty
doing
tight
that.
controls, but,
Well, I think Ernie's got the right idea. Let's get together outside of this and hash a couple of ideas through and bring back a policy for approval. And let's hammer it out. See what the best options are.
Bring us a proposal.
Anything?
No, I'm good with that idea.
Okay.
okay,
All
that's all I
right,
got today.
thank you.
Thank you.
I do need to request, we do have one purchase where alcohol was made. I do need to ask for an exception in that case, so that when that comes before the board next week.
So the policy that you sent out does allow for, if there's a violation or a rule break, that the employee that does that has the ability to reimburse the county within 60 days for any purchases made that were kind of outside that scope.
Right.
So if it's an issue, I don't have a problem buying this
Well,
guy's drink.
I think just pending a revised policy, the board could just approve.
I was
the
there,
expenditure.
and I didn't stop it, I didn't think about it. I'll take full responsibility myself. And so if you commissioners have a question, otherwise, I would agree with Christie, and let's go ahead and pay this tab.
And that will come before you because that was on Scott's card and Scott can't authorize that, so we'll bring that up for you guys to approve.
Because this actually brought up a good point too. So anytime somebody uses a credit card, the employee uses the credit card, signs the form, then the department head signs the form, and then it comes over here, and then you guys sign it. You guys are my bosses. So if I sign it as the person using the card, who out of the commission signs it, or does it have to come to a meeting to be signed by you guys, and then come back to be paid also?
Well, the commission has to sign any commission report to release
Sure.
any and all claims, even invoices that they
Yeah,
sign.
but,
So you just need to sign it as the employee because it's your card
Mhm.
and nobody can use your card but you.
true.
And then either Braden can sign it or the board will sign it and then it'll come back on the commission report. But you just turn it into us, we'll get their signature, easy peasy.
However you guys want to do it.
Yeah,
I just
easy
want to
peasy.
make it kind of easy and
Yeah.
everything, so.
Maybe knows how to do it.
Well, but we've been doing it. Annie signed it as the person that's made the purchase, even though it's my purchase, and I signed as the department head.
Which is not correct.
Yeah, and so Christie caught that on this specific one too, and said, hey, we're doing that wrong, and I thought,
Yeah.
okay, let's just clarify how we want the purchase done. So if I can
Well-
sign it as the person that makes the purchase and turn it to you guys,
Yep.
Um,
that's
we're
how it
gonna
works.
that works for me perfect.
Yep,
We're
that's
going to have an elected officials meeting the 1st of January, and then we're going to have a department head meeting the week after that, and this will be part of the discussion. We'll go over credit cards and what the priorities are and what we need to do. So, but I'd ask for a motion on this last one.
To authorize the.
Authorize
expense.
payment.
Authorize that payment.
Well, okay. I was gonna say, do we need to, because they'll just bring it next week and we sign it next week.
That's true.
It just allows Christie to bring it to us in that manner. saying-
It's almost authorization to process,
Okay.
right?
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we authorize processing this claim.
We have a motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Just because it's an exception to the policy. I want it on the record, so that we're not doing anything.
And I appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Tori, I'm gonna skip you for a minute, is that all right?
Morning.
Good morning.
Tori Danner, Bannock County Coroner. All right. So I had a call over the weekend. I don't know how much you guys know as far as I know. Jeff and I spoke about the morgue situation up at PMC. Currently, they are down. They've been down over a week at this point, and when that happens, because we utilize them to handle all of our morgue capabilities, we are then left without an option. We have been using funeral homes, just based on relationships that I have with funeral homes. The problem is funeral homes, utilizing funeral home facilities causes chain of custody issues, right? Because all we have is like a little tag. Outside of that, we can't limit their office as far as when and who can go in their own facility. So we have been searching for a alternative of what to do. So basically what we've done is we've looked at how we can utilize our trailer in the meantime, right?
That would be my question. We have a trailer, how come we're not utilizing it?
Because we didn't have power ran to it. And the fact is we have to run power from one end of the covered areas where it's stored to the other. I was a little hesitant on whether to invest money in there due to the fact that we're kind of waiting on what the long-term plan is. I know that we submitted ARPA projects, and just correct me if I'm wrong, ARPA projects were kind of decided as far as what's happening.
Correct.
I know we're kind of waiting to move forward based on what comes in on the facility. Is that correct? I guess what are your guys's, what's your plan?
We're waiting for the
Okay.
drawings and where we're at there.
And just to be clear, if I understand right, when the facility comes in, we're planning on maybe relocating my office to that facility?
That's part of the conversation.
Okay. And then if we do that, what are your guys's, like, what's that? Are we doing everything? Are we just doing office space?
What do you
What are
mean?
your,
What do you mean?
Well, as far as coolers, like my project included the fact that we needed coolers and everything else so that we can have forward operations, and we're investing in us rather than utilizing third-party resources like we do now, right? So doing this in that new facility, how does that look for you guys? Because I know that you're trying to come in under a certain dollar amount, but now with the idea of moving my office over there, are we thinking about what that actually entails in terms of the drawings or whatever you guys are doing?
We're
Because
not
like
to
you
that
mentioned that
point yet.
you're putting some drawings together so that we can get some accurate numbers back. So I guess my question was, are those things being thought about? What that looks like square footage wise, what that looks like in terms of as we move forward towards our accreditation?
We can't answer that just yet.
Okay.
I mean, that's in the back of the mind, and those are what we're looking at, but until
Sure.
we have numbers and decide size, then I can't answer that question.
Okay.
So,
And so that's kind of what I'm looking, is just so that we're all on the same page, I guess, because as we look at our day-to-day operations and having to utilize morgue facility space, we did take on a two-person cooler that was, that's what this is about, is to be able to, we have an offering of a two-person cooler unit that was, the morgue facility upgraded their cooler unit so that they had this two-person to get rid of, and they donated it to us. So first, I guess we're looking to see if we can officially accept that donation. So you guys have any questions about that?
No, I don't. Any questions?
Okay. What we will do is we will try and utilize that the best that we can, and that should work in the interim. I'm just trying to look where I'm at right now, what can we do long-term, and make sure that we're all on the same page. Does that make sense?
So have you got the power to the trailer now?
No, they're working on it. Due to the fact that we've got a ton of projects going. I have to wait my turn. I can't just jump to the front. So we're
Okay.
working on it, but in the interim, we're utilizing what we can.
Okay, yeah. I thought we had the access to that trailer now, so.
We do, but the only way we can operate it is by either running the generator full-time or we figure out how to plug it in. We don't have an access point to plug in at this time.
What size power does it need? Does it take just
240, I think. So, I mean, and we have it on the other side of the bays, but we're going to have to move it. Again, coming back to the ARPA project was to expand the current facility that I'm in. I understand that we're kind of waiting to figure out what happens with the new facility. So therefore, I hesitate on, how do we put more money into a facility that we might not be staying in, right?
Yeah.
So, but after speaking with Kyle, we kind of decided that either way, whether I stay or I go, moving the power over there and giving him that opportunity, if we do vacate that bay, he'll have another bay that he can park a truck in and hook some other trucks up. So it sounds like it's a win-win at this point, but I kind of just wanted to keep the lines of communication open and make sure that we're all on the same page as far as what direction we're moving, so that I know how to kind of gauge and what to plan for and for how long.
We'll let you know as soon as we know.
Okay.
That's kind of where
So,
we're at.
But yeah, that's where I'm at, is because within this last week, we've had a couple juvenile deaths and in custody, things like that we've had to, it shifts from, we get by certain cases if we utilize a funeral home, right, or if we have to do something like that. But if it's a criminal case, that causes issues, and not having another alternative is where I'm concerned.
And that's what I said. I thought we had the ability to have our trailer that was secure and.
Yes and no, there are some security concerns as far as no cameras. It is a trailer. We have a lock on the hitch, right? So you can't just back up and steal it. But talking with the different departments, there are some security issues still. Being where it's at, open bay, everything like that. I mean, for us, it's fairly secure, but there are some concerns. I've spoke with prosecutors in every agency that we work with as far as whose case it may be, just to kind of see what they think. But there are some concerns. So that's more or less the reason why I kind of want to find out the direction we're going and what we're looking to in the future.
Okay.
So, okay?
All right.
All right.
Thank you. Julie.
Julie Hancock, Bannock County Elections Director, Administrator. I don't know.
Chief cook and bottle washer.
Boss.
We're here today to talk about additional electronic poll books. I brought one with me. We just received some for training, so this is what they look like. Hard metal case. When the poll workers are using these, the voter would come in, they have a scanner right here, or camera, scan the driver's license, make sure there's no residency or ID flags, flip it back over, voter signs it, off they go. So the problem right now in training and learning more about how these work, if a same-day voter registration comes in, this same poll book is used to scan the voter registration card and then enter it. So now you're switching gears with a line of people right here that are already registered to vote, that are moving through the line pretty quickly. Now we have to stop, enter a voter registration card while the line is still backing up. In November alone, we had 675 same-day voter registrations. So double that in May, triple that in November of next year. So what we're asking for today is more poll books. So each precinct has 2.
When Julie was doing her training last week, and it was a state training, what she found that we didn't know is that because we're we are really the last big county to have e-poll books, that everyone really kind of started with 1 or 2, except for the big counties. They started with more and more, but even the smaller counties have 2 per precinct, so that they can do same-day voter registrations on one, and then issuing ballots on the one to keep the line moving. So we have, as you know, the first round of HAVA funds that we're using for the primary purchase of the first set. We have a second round of HAVA funds that we'll be getting, but it's not quite enough to cover a secondary purchase to double up. So what we're asking for is to probably use ARPA money to cover the difference of what our HAVA money is, supplement that with ARPA money to the tune of about $30,000, so that we have double coverage plus a few extra in case they go down, if we break one or whatever the case is. so that we have double coverage for every precinct.
So having double books, does that mean you have to have another person, another poll worker?
No, it'll be the same amount of team, the same amount of, anywhere from the chief judge plus 4, chief judge plus 3, that won't change.
Okay.
And it'll only speed up the process. On election day, it will be faster, and one of the nice things is the cost savings after the fact, and we've talked about this. Talk about balancing and the voter registration cards after
Okay.
the election.
And also to your point, Commissioner, we already have a designated registrar that does the paper cards, already designated at the polling place. So that person would just have this now, but it would be the same amount of, the team would be the same size. So when an election is over, we gather all of the same-day voter registration cards, and then we have to enter all those cards before we can even start balancing the poll books. In the poll book, you've all signed a poll book. When you vote, there's a barcode of your voter ID number. And so we have hand wands, like a scanner almost, and you have to individually wand every single person that voted, signature line, into our voter database to give voter history. And then we make sure that the amount of ballots we ran through the machine matches the amount of signatures in that poll book. With these, it's called a data dump. You just upload all of the precincts into the book, the precinct voters by precinct, and then when the election day is over, you just plug it back in and take all of that in a push of a button. All the voter history goes into it. Then when you get to the balancing, we'd still have to balance, because you still want to make sure that the election workers got it right, our machines got it right, our voter database got it right. That's our checks and balances. So when you're looking at a primary election, for every party that has a ballot, you have to wand in separately. So you tell the system, I'm now wanding in voter history for a Republican. Go through the whole book. Now I'm wanding Democrats. Go through the whole book. Now I'm wanding Libertarians. Go through the whole book. Now I'm wanding nonpartisans. Go through the whole book. So it can take, in a primary especially, it can take 5 or 6 hours sometimes just to balance one poll book. We're weeks out getting voter history data to people that want it. So that's going to all go away, which means, unfortunately for our temporary staff, their time frame is going to shrink as far as how many days they work, how many months they're off, which makes it a little more difficult to hire, because you're looking specifically for someone like Greg, who's a retired police officer, or Nancy, who's a retired librarian. That fits their schedule. So it's kind of a difficult position to hire, but that's going to save us in payroll costs also. These are.
Julie had that difficult conversation with them 2 days ago.
It wasn't very easy.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's
probably.
tough. They're good.
Well,
Every
with
time
the-
I've been in there, I mean, they're great people.
Yeah, truly. It's a great team over there. And then with legislation taking the March election off the books, they're off for 3 months now instead of 1.
Well, I cheer that decision by the legislature.
Oh, for sure. I think they're going to talk about taking that August one out too. Wouldn't hurt my feelings.
No, I appreciate your moving forward and making us more efficient and looking to the future. Questions?
How many poll books are you looking to buy additional?
So we have 57 precincts. So we bought, the first round was 60. And so Christy and Jason crunched some numbers. I'm not sure where we landed with how many you want for the second round.
The carts that we're getting hold 70.
60.
60, that's right.
So we're getting 3.
So
yeah.
if we got about 60 and 60 or wherever our have a money breaks down with the carts and the cradle points, I would like to look at our have a money is 33,000 and some change. So I would like up to maybe an additional 30,000.
Oh,
They're $750 a piece, including the case and everything, and that will get us all of our extra carts and
And we'd
Create
have a
points.
handful of extra in
And
the
then-
event.
And that'll give us a handful of
Yeah.
extra.
We have a couple precincts that have really gotten expanded, like precinct 37, which is Jason's neighborhood. They have a 1,000 apartment complex of 1,000 apartments, and they're all full now. So we need to look into also potentially splitting that precinct in half and creating another precinct. But when we look at buying electronic poll books, if that particular precinct is going to see the flow that they did in November, which wasn't a huge election, I mean, you're looking at 28% turnout, next year, double that or triple that, we could potentially give them 3 books. So they've got 2 people doing voter registration and 1 that's moving the line in those stacked and packed precincts.
Well, and you're talking about ARPA funds, and but I'd like to identify, whether we're gonna do ARPA funds, what source we're gonna utilize. I mean, we need to move forward, in my opinion, just identifying where that pot of money will come out of.
Well, we have 250,000 remaining out of ARPA money that has not been dedicated, so we could just take the 30 out of there.
And I agree with that, except that we had other projects in our ARPA list that we've denied so far. So I think that conversation is still there for that. So that's why, if there's another source, I'd just like to look and see what our sources and options are.
When are they going to come in? When would we pay the bill? Next month?
We haven't been invoiced for the first round yet.
Okay.
And I
So
haven't
these are
asked,
So, yeah,
until I get
you're
approval,
right.
I
We have-
haven't asked
We have a minute that
for.
we could
Okay, so
look
the other
and bring it
option
back.
would be the jail boiler project is supposed to be done the middle of next month.
The what
Doesn't
project?
get pushed back, the jail boiler.
Yeah.
We have $400,000 budgeted for that. We've already reallocated some monies. Matt's body armor, and then also we did the,
Oh, yeah, one other
something
small
last
thing.
week.
Yeah.
We did one other thing, but that's
Yeah.
$400,000 we
It's gonna end up
could
being
potentially
less than
take out of there.
30,000.
And that's why the ARPA funds,
The wellness patrol.
I'm still protecting them
Yep.
somewhat until we decide exactly where them are gonna go. I mean, I don't want to
Sure.
spend 30,000 here and then have a project that's 250,000. And
Sure.
some of the other projects that we're doing right now, I want to make sure that we have funds for them also.
And next month, I wanted to do an ARPA update anyways, because there's been a couple of NACO webinars that talks about what is obligated, and that has me a little concerned about getting that money expended
Okay.
before December 31st of next year.
So we'll do,
And that's looking at, we have the mayor of Downey here right now, but looking at the fairgrounds and stuff down there and on money that we had committed for this year's building and then we didn't get it in this year's, in the budget for next year. And there's some changes there too that I want to make sure that we have the funds to cover.
so we'll do a little spreadsheet of what we've ordered and what it's cost and the ARPA or the HAVA money that we've used, the HAVA money that we'll additionally get, and the additional money that we'll need for the carts and the additional books, and kind of put a spreadsheet together, and the additional money that we'll need and a couple of different options, and bring it back.
Yeah, the boiler is one I keep thinking about, is because I was on that meeting too, and by mid-February, we should know where our funding
Sure.
is there, so that, and that is money, if we don't spend it, it wasn't dedicated to anything else either, so
Okay.
I'd like to utilize it as much as we can also.
How long does it take, once we order, Julie, how long does it take them to get us 60?
Well, I asked them to delay shipment until after the November election, and I asked for 6 for training purposes. I got them in 4 or 5 days.
Okay.
So not long. I haven't done, obviously without approval, done the second round. So they'll probably ship the remainder of this initial 60. We'll probably have them by January, and then pay that invoice that will get 100% reimbursed for that one.
The original 60.
The
The original 60, yeah.
So if we were to order another 60, you think it will take us, if we order them in February, we'll have them by May?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we should have them before that. I'd like to have more of them. We're going to have to train all of our poll workers, and so I'd like to have some that they can actually touch.
Yeah, hands-on.
So,
Well,
So
the
these-
commission's already approved 30,000, you could order them now. They're not real fast on invoicing us.
Yeah.
They're not.
And they would be probably fine with us paying in February if we have to. But get them coming.
And we should know a lot more on that boiler, first of January.
We've got another
We got
call
another-
on the second week of January. I think.
Yeah.
And so hopefully if that one's.
So are you
done,
okay with us ordering the second round and then we'll figure it out?
I am.
Okay.
That's the way I,
I can do that today. How many? Do we want to do
An
another?
additional
An
60?
additional 60, okay. Yeah, that gives us 6 extra. But I mean,
Well, then you'll have 12 extra, right?
Then-
Because you have 6
Yeah,
of each
so that'll
set.
give us 12 extra.
right.
Don't you have 6 extra
Yeah, 'cause
with
we
the
have
6? Well, you really
No,
only have 3
these,
extra, right?
no, you'll only
Yeah,
have 6
yeah,
extra
'Cause you have
because these,
57 precincts,
these
so
are
you'll
part of
have
the.
6 extra.
No, these are, the 6 that I got for training are part of the
Part of the
60.
60.
They're part of the 60.
Yes,
57 precincts.
So that only gives you 3 extra.
right, so with the
Right.
second
And then
purchase,
you-
it gives
so
us
then you'll have
6.
to- okay, I got you.
6, yeah.
Yep.
And then, I mean, now if we do this great big chunk of change at one time, and if we decide down the road that more are necessary, then we're looking at buying, 5 or 6 at a time instead of
Yeah.
a large
Maybe
number,
we
which
should
wouldn't
do 70
impact,
and 70
wouldn't impact the budget as much.
while we're doing it.
we have some funds, so you figure out
We'll
what,
calculate it.
what you need.
We'll go, this is what we'll do. We'll go through our precincts that we think might be really nice to have 3, like 37. So we have 2 that are doing voter registrations, those
Okay.
that are really fast-growing precincts
Mhm.
and areas, and we'll come up with a number,
Okay,
and we'll come up with those. We'll get them.
But we're still gonna be in that $30,000 price range,
Right,
somewhere
yeah.
close to that.
Even if
So-
we order, make the first order 70 and the second order 70, we're still in
Right.
that 30 grand range.
We're still in that range, yeah.
yeah.
Somewhere close to that, so we go ahead and order them.
Okay.
We'll identify the path that we have for funds.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that all
Thanks,
right?
Commissioners.
Absolutely.
Good.
John? You
I'm
good with
good.
that? Okay.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya.
All right. Looks like next step is Al. Why don't you come on up? We're going to talk about commission discussion pertaining to next step after appeal regarding conditional use permit on the gravel pit in Chubbuck.
Paul Jensen, Planning Director. You have before you, I believe, you're within your 60 days to make a decision on reconsideration of those items. So
Yes.
do you have items that you need to discuss with us, or do you need to do that discussion internally and
Well,
give us direction on what that decision is?
I think this one is more of an internal. We've talked with our legal counsel. We've talked about sending this back to
Back to the council.
the council.
And this is which one?
This
Gravel
is
pit.
the gravel pit.
Gravel pit, okay. And sending it back with what direction?
With the direction of having a clear answer on each of the questions that are asked.
Okay, so.
Some of those had answers of, well, check here or check there. Where we've gone to court with one of these other ones, we need a more precise answer of the reason why.
So you want the findings clarified?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Everybody in agreement with that?
Yep.
Let's go ahead and make that in a motion.
Really quick before you do that, just a clarification, are you wanting that to just go back to council as a business item? So no new public comment, no new information?
Correct.
Just based on what they already heard?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So it's the commission's intent, I know there was some additional information provided after that hearing, but the commission's intent is to have the council just review their record they already heard and clarify their findings, conclusions of law, and make a reasoned statement, and then go from there.
That's
Correct.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I would move that we send the conditional use permit for the gravel pit back to council for further clarification. Would you say that, how you did that, Brian?
Yeah, to go through the criteria just based on the record of what they heard at the first hearing, to further their findings with facts, their conclusions, why they arrived there, with a reasoned statement.
There you go, perfect.
As a business item.
As a business item.
Thank you.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the next discussion is pertaining to limelight action. This one, Brian, talk about where we're at with this one.
So Limelight went through a judicial review. As the commission is aware, that judicial review came back, the court remanded it back to the board for the board to make additional findings of facts and conclusions of law and a reasoned statement on the criteria of the concept plan. That's where it's.
Okay. Comments on this one?
Did you prepare any further information on that as far as further clarification or reasoning statement on that?
I know that the commission had the record, and for the commission to review the record, to be prepared to go through the criteria to decide what facts the commission's relying on for their decision, the conclusions, and a reasoned statement. But and I was going to be here to listen. I did suggest a protocol to the commission about having a scribe as that discussion's taking place.
And did you receive anything
Did I receive anything what?
on this? Any past documents that we'd had?
I read through the entire packet that was given to us on the original one last night and reviewed that. And I didn't prepare any further clarification statements other than what was already there. And so what do we need to do right now to move this thing forward?
Right, so there would be, just like how the council kind of went through the criteria and whether the criteria was met or not, and why, what facts the commission wants to rely on from the record that was put in front of the council. And then the conclusion and a reasoned statement, and then we can get that written up in a finding and then approved by the commission, so.
John, you received the packet like yesterday too?
Yep.
Did you have time to go through it?
Not
Do you
the
feel
whole thing.
Okay. And that's part of the problem, is everybody hasn't received the information. And
I was somewhat expecting you to prepare that for us, because I thought during our previous discussion that we had asked you to prepare those findings of facts for us so that it was in alignment with where we wanted to go.
The commission needs to have a discussion to make what those findings of facts are going to be and what those conclusions are.
But that's what we did, that's what we did in the executive session. We talked about that we just needed that fleshed out with the verbiage from you so that we could come in here today and move forward with that.
Well, the findings need to be made in an open meeting.
Correct. You present us with that document, we review it today and decide if we want to move forward or not.
So we talked about what the judgment was and what we need to do, and I sent the record. From what I took from that, the anticipation, at least what I had, was that the commission would review the record so we could have so they could have a discussion, the commission could have a discussion about it and make the findings of facts from what the criteria is and what the conclusions are, and then based on what was discussed, then the writings and findings of facts would be prepared.
well, and I have to agree with Jeff. I thought that after our executive session, there were some things that were going to happen, and they never happened.
Correct.
And we don't have them. And so we're going to have to put this off again until we have the direction, everybody on the same page in the direction we need to go. Or we make a decision right now and we send it back to the board. That's
To
the
the
two
council.
choices, to the council.
The council.
I don't want to send it back there. That's too much time. We've messed with this long enough.
Well, I'm wondering how much time it is, and then I have a second question on that. Are we comfortable with the conclusions of the board that they aren't, conclusory in nature? I mean, if this is what we're relying on, the record from the council's first meeting, were some of their findings conclusory?
I felt like they were after reading through it last night.
You felt
We
like they
just-
were
I
conclusory?
felt like they were. They just weren't spelled out very,
No,
very
no,
well.
that's a problem if they're conclusory.
Okay, define that for me so I make sure I'm understanding.
Isn't that correct, Brian, that the judge said we don't want conclusory statements, that the statement itself is conclusory, that we want to go through and show from the information how you reach that decision, or am I using that term?
I mean, that's what it came down, but that's why we're having the meeting, is so we could have additional findings of facts and conclusions upon a reasoned statement. That's for the board to come up with those.
Okay, we're gonna have to put this off till next Thursday. We'll put it back on our agenda for Thursday. We will have conversation, we will have what we need. I'll visit with him, we'll make sure that everybody's on the same page. But at this point right now, there's a lot of confusion, and so,
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
If we were to send it back to the council, when would we have their decision? How long does that take?
they won't meet for a month,
Yeah,
correct?
so the next available meeting date would be February 17th, 20th. It's that third week, that third Wednesday in February is the next available meeting. The January meeting agenda has already been outlined and
And to speak to that a little bit, John, I feel like we have some obligations, because this has been going on for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we have some obligations to, as commissioners, to say, okay, by next Thursday, we are making the decisions to pass this on and make sure that it moves forward. I'm accepting some of the obligation responsibility there.
Okay.
so,
Yeah.
sorry, just so I have some clarification, are the findings that are needing a reason statement the ones from the preliminary plat approval?
No, the concept plan.
The
The
concept
preliminary
plan?
plat was in the bill.
Okay.
Okay? So we got some homework to do. This is going to have a conclusion by us on Thursday. Yeah. Braden, would you make sure that that's on our agenda?
I got it right now.
All right. Further comments?
No.
Jeff? No. Okay. Sorry, but we will move forward on that one. All right? Our next discussion pertains to energy project moratorium. Players? Please introduce yourselves.
Dustin Manwaring. Good morning, Commission, Milestone Law Office. I'm representing Balanced Rock Power and Hecate Energy this morning. And I'll let these three introduce themselves on the record, and then they can do some more formal introductions here in a few minutes.
Okay.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. Alex Pugh, Director of Development for Hecate Energy. And I can give a summary of our company, or we can just do quick introductions.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, so Hecate Energy, we are a top 10 renewable energy developer in the U.S. We have over 50 gigawatts of projects, solar energy storage, offshore wind, and a little bit of terrestrial wind, but mostly solar and storage projects in development in the United States. About 6 gigawatts of that is under contract and ready to be developed. We are in the process of developing an early stage project in Downey, Idaho, and is sort of part of this discussion.
Morning. My name is Laura Abram. I represent Balanced Rock Power, or BRP. BRP is a company that was formed in 2021, and we develop renewable energy projects, both solar and battery storage, standalone battery storage. We have a pipeline of about 12 gigawatts, and we are developing a project called Harmon Solar, which is estimated to be about 300 megawatts. located in Downey. I'm happy to talk more about that.
Morning, Commissioners. Perry Fontana, representing Balance Rock Power. I work in the development group, so all the aspects of development, real estate, permitting, and have been involved in working with staff as we continue to advance this project.
So, Chairman, and maybe I'll just continue, and you can tell me if you want to adjust the format of how you want this to work, but what I'd like to do first is just say thank you for having this work session. And the process, really, my involvement came to fruition about a month ago based on this moratorium that was put in place by the commission, this 180-day moratorium. And what we're really doing right now is the primary objective is focusing on getting a working ordinance in Bannock County, and a solar ordinance that we all can use and is something that's productive. And I'm pleased to sit here today and tell you the last few weeks have been really pleasing. The process, as I've been involved in this, to work forward and have a draft ordinance has been good. Staffs here, Tristan and Hal, have been great. We have now a first draft ordinance that has been presented to Planning and Development Council last week. So they had a first discussion on that first draft ordinance, and we had input, some comments that we shared in advance of that meeting. We also now have this formal comment letter that's in your packet. You should have that on page 21. And that letter has, I think it's 5 pages, and we have some formal comments that we've reviewed from that first draft solar ordinance. So those have been shared with council. They have that as well. That letter's drafted to council. What we wanted to do today is bring forward some of those main points from that formal letter and invite any other comments from you, since you're the ultimate ones that will have to sign off on that ordinance. We don't want to interfere with the process. We know it has to go back to a public hearing with council and go through that process and come back here, but if we can all be on the same page working together, I think we can stay with or be ahead of our time frame for that 180-day moratorium, and these projects can advance to apply for a permit. So with that being said, I'll proceed and go through some of these points unless you have anything else you want to set the framework for this discussion for.
Go ahead and share with us, and then
Okay.
we'll go from there.
Dustin,
Yeah.
in that process, we've reviewed that letter as well. We will interject to share with you our thoughts and our comments,
Yeah.
actions that we have or we haven't taken internally with staff, so that it just, we'll try to segue with you.
Okay.
Okay?
That works. Yeah. Just stop or interject anytime and we'll do that.
Thank you.
So the first one, we have definitions that we're requesting to have some specific things defined in that ordinance. The first draft that we saw didn't have a definition section, so we're asking that there are some specific definitions, and one of those that's important first off the bat is the solar power facility, and what is that facility, what comprises a solar power facility, so we know what's included. And one of the things that's important to make sure you're including in a solar power facility is storage. Right, we want to make sure that that's okay to operate. So it's not just solar panels and collecting the energy, but you're also able to store it. And we have experts here, right? So they can explain this stuff a lot better than I do. So I'm going to cover the high points, and if you're like, what does that mean? Then I'll happy to defer. They can interject if they have something else that they want to speak on. And then the other 2 points, to split out large scale and small scale in the definitions, because those are different size projects, right? They're under different parameters to have large scale and small scale, and we want that to be clearly defined in the code, right? If it's someone that has a few solar panels out on their property or on their roof, that's a lot different than commercial projects that have a lot of acreage, and so we want that to be clearly defined in code, and then. And we have that, and that's defined by both acreage and kilowatts, right? To separate those out. The second one is setbacks, and that's an important one. Setbacks and height requirements, and there wasn't very many specific numbers listed in the draft so far that I saw. There was numbers listed for the small scale projects, but what we want to make sure is that when we're applying for a conditional use permit, that we don't have arbitrary numbers, or we don't know what the setbacks and height requirements will be, right? So what we're asking in our comment is that we default to something that's in existing code that we can at least refer to, And so we said agriculture accessory structures, at least default to that standard for commercial ag operations in the code. And then if there needs to be some deviation from that, you can work through that. But at least we have something that's defaulted to for setbacks and height requirements. And if you look at the the wind ordinance, there are some specific setback and height requirements, but they're usually tied to like the height of a windmill and things that are just not applicable in the solar context.
Dustin, can I interrupt
Go
you for a
ahead.
second? I did have a question on the first part of the definition here, where you're talking about large and small scale facilities. And I see in your definition here that you say a large-scale facility would be projects that encumber 100 or more acres of land.
That's right.
And so how did we determine that 100 acres and not 90 or 50 or some other number is the correct number? Because we only see two definitions. You either have a large project or a small project. And do you guys have any comments with regard to this?
So we've actually added quite a few additional definitions to our second draft, and we also outline what a personal use energy project would be as well. We have struggled a little bit with how many panels does 10 megawatts look like, or 200 kilowatts, or, so those are some of the things that we've been looking at. And what is a nameplate capacity? Is that the total capacity over a month, over a day, over a year? I actually asked ChatGTP that question yesterday because I was trying to figure it out. So yeah, those are some things that we have been looking at. What does that look like? It's hard to visualize when we've not done one before. How big of a project is that?
So am I understanding that you may have other you might have a medium scale facility or something like that?
So not a medium, it would still just be large and small, but we also define what personal use, how large a personal use could be.
So you have personal use, small and large.
Correct.
And as you're looking at this, are you looking at 100 or more acres as well as the large?
Yeah, so the
so 99 acres would be small.
Yeah, so the definitions that they provided are actually almost identical to the ones that we ended up putting in our second draft. And it is an or statement on that large scale, so it could be 10 megawatts or more, or 100 acres. So
Right.
if you have 99 acres, but it's 11 megawatts, it's still going to fall under that large scale energy facility.
Whichever is the most restrictive, that's what we default to.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about this to know what that's going to look like. So.
Right, which is one of the questions that we had, and we were trying to figure it out and educate ourselves a little bit yesterday on what that would actually look like.
Is there like an industry
Yeah,
guideline?
so let me get this to Perry first, and he can add some context on those numbers, and then if anybody else wants to add anything, they can.
Thank you. So what's proposed in terms of the 10 megawatts? 10 megawatts is an instantaneous number. So that if you were to look at a solar facility, what is it producing to the grid? 10 megawatts is a very commonly used number to separate what we call utility scale solar or large solar from the smaller, more commercial solar. The 100 acres is a good indicative number. The thing I think to recognize, and this is why kind of both of those metrics are there, is solar panels are becoming much more efficient constantly. So you're now getting more energy density on a smaller part of land. But I think having both of those metrics, one makes it clear to industry, and I think makes it very clear to your commission, really where the project's falling. Is it a small project? Is it a large project?
On the industry standards that I've researched and looked at, it's like anywhere between 5 and 10 acres per megawatt. Is that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Roughly default to 8 acres per megawatt.
Okay.
But that number will come down as the technology improves.
So that leads the question, if this is like a 10 megawatt thing, should our large scale be 80 acres versus 100, or is just 100 give us that extra?
I think we would suggest that, again, the instantaneous megawatt number, I think, is a good number, because, again, we're all talking about the same thing. There are different tracker systems, fixed tilt systems. There's a number of different ways you could do your panels that will influence your ground coverage. This way, I think you have a nice, clear standard. And again, tying it to an acreage, I think is also helpful for the public, because quite frankly, until I got into this business, 10 megawatts was, I have no idea, so.
Thank you.
And then I have another question here. So you said the facility, the solar power facility includes not just the solar array, but the battery storage facility, an energy storage facility, and some other things here. How much acreage do those take, or do they even take an acre?
It depends on the size of the unit. So storage systems are much more dense, and a typical storage system will look like sort of a shipping container. They're purpose built, but essentially looks like a steel shipping container.
I'm sorry, run that by me.
A steel shipping container. So
the storage facility looks like a steel shipping container?
Yeah, so it'll be a series of purpose-built steel shipping containers on
How
pads. It depends on the size, but
If you have 100,
so if you had, say, 100 megawatts, you might have 200 sort of boxes. And that can fit on, less than 10 acres.
mm-hmm. And is that the same thing as the energy storage facility? That's different than a battery storage facility? These are two different things.
They're the same thing. They're just different terms for the same battery or energy storage. There are other ways to store energy other than battery that are not commonly used today. So right now, the industry standard is sort of the same thing you have in your cell phone. It's a lithium-ion battery. It's a specific chemistry that is used for large scale, but essentially it's something you would recognize. In the future, there may be different sort of options for energy storage.
And what's a meteorological tower?
It's essentially a weather station. So it'll look at wind speed, temperature, solar irradiation, essentially how much sunlight you're getting. It just sort of to understand sort of what the atmospheric conditions are.
How big is this thing?
Oh, I mean, it's sort of a box. You'd probably have one here on the roof of the building.
Oh, so it's pretty small.
With an antenna.
When it says tower, it makes me think we're getting something.
I mean, tower is a term of art, but no, for
guess.
solar projects, they tend not to be very large.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be something like 10 feet.
Yeah.
But we're not talking hundreds of feet or anything.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And just a quick follow-up on the storage. If we're doing a 10 megawatt and it requires some of that storage, and we're saying 100 acres, all of that should fit within that 100 acres?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the reason for the inclusive definition is it includes things like the fencing, roads, any equipment that's associated with the solar project is within that 100 acres.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Were you good?
Yeah, I was just going to comment that when we call it an energy storage facility, sometimes you can have a standalone just battery storage as well. So just wanted to clarify that.
Good. Keep going. The next one is the term of approval on the permit. So what we're requesting is that there's a process here to extend the term of approval beyond 2 years. What we've suggested, and we added some specific suggested language to try to have something that would be workable, but it'd be a 2-year period followed by another 2-year period that could be approved by the director. And then if it needed to go beyond that, then it would have to go back through council to get an extension. We can speak to why that's so important, but a lot of that is because of how these things are approved now, and with FERC and the other approval process in place. It's going to take a lot longer now. You have to do things on the front end, and it's going to take a long time before you can get or dirt turned, right? So the 2 years just isn't a realistic time frame on that permit, and so we need a process that's workable, that we know that we can extend. And that's what we're asking, that we know we have a time period, and he may have something to insert on that.
So in our initial research, putting the ordinance together, we went with, shall we say, what was commonly an industry standard or other ordinance. In our conversations previously with Mr. Fontana and others, they explained to us some of their processes and some of the guidelines and other governmental entities that they have to work with, as well as utilities, interconnection agreements. There's a number of things that have to take place. The process is now somewhat changed. Therefore, the need for them to request of us to change the language in the ordinance, because not everything fits within a perfect box that's written in an ordinance. So I would agree that there needs to be some flexibility relative to that hard line.
Yeah. Well, and that's when we talked about this last time, and Rocky Mountain Power was here.
Yes.
A lot of times they said they don't even get contacted until the project's already approved or going and stuff, and that's a problem too. Is there's got to be that end of the communication. If Rocky Mountain Power isn't going to let you connect, or there's a problem there, or the other funds that need to come forward to build that station, that need to be up front somewhere. So I don't know where that would fit in here in the communication part of it.
That's part of their requirements on the
probably
front end
add-
before they ever come to us for a conditional use permit. They've already
Okay,
crossed that.
that's what I want to make sure
Nope.
that, because they said people, just dealing with them, they've had people buy ground and stuff and come in and say, okay, we're ready to hook up, and
Yeah.
no, it isn't that simple. You got to spend $10 million to hook up to us now, and then they end the project.
So, real quickly, the reason for this is that we have had conversation, very serious conversation, with two. These people representing one of those conversations. What is now being pursued and put in place relative to this ordinance and the conversations that we've had on developing this, it's not working to make it convenient for them. It's helping them produce the front-end paperwork as required. One of those pieces of paperwork that's required is a conditional use permit. They have to show that they have approval to other entities beyond them, okay? Who knows how long, once that conditional use permit may be in place, all of the other approvals that they have to work through will come to them. Right now, we assume that it's closely within a 2-year time period, and we needed something to work with in the ordinance as a starting point. So that's why I offered the concession previously that we should consider how we work a potential extension should it be needed.
Well, I'm all for getting this done right the first time, and that's the whole reason we did the moratorium, because we didn't know, and we want to do it the right way.
Well, there's a number of elements that, in studying other solar ordinances from across the United States as well as in the state of Idaho, there's a lot of things that we did not understand that I think an ordinance protects the county relative to this type of development.
My question on
Makes sense.
this particular point is 2 years enough? Would it be better to look at a 3-year conditional use permit specifically on these type of projects, so we don't have to come back and forth multiple times if we?
Mr. Manwaring's comment was 2 years with a potential of 2 years at the discretion of the director. And basically that discretion is they come to the table and say, we've done these things, we have 2 more items, and we will be complete, we anticipate, within the next 6 months. They're just showing the process of their due diligence. We missed this deadline. That makes sense to me.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And I like it coming back to you as the director instead of coming back to us.
Really?
I mean, you're hanging around for a while, buddy.
It's on the video now, so. So the additional 2 years would be at the director's discretion.
Yes.
What if and then I see there's additional time extension of up to 2 years determined by the planning council, may be granted. Let's say, just for example, that the director says, well, you know what, I don't want to give you another 2 years. What's their recourse?
There's nothing in the recourse. Oh, I take that back. They can appeal staff decision. which then goes to council, which then goes to commission, I believe.
Okay. And to me, that's not clear.
But that's built into our ordinance.
Yeah, yeah.
That's in the.
In what I'm reading here, so maybe.
Correct. Just for clarification.
Yeah.
And I need to backtrack real quickly. When the first edit and the ordinance was put together, knowing full well the structure of our existing ordinance, I took all of the definitions out, because those definitions, when we bring it for a final, there will be multiple sections of the ordinance that will be revised. Our current ordinance does not have definitions in each respective section as it applies to that particular scope of work or process. So therefore, all of the definitions have been added in our edits to our definitions in Chapter 2, okay?
Mhm.
Just so that
Got it.
they're aware of it. Relative to time, we have taken all of our, setbacks, we have taken all of the setbacks and added them to all of the respective sections that this would have implication for. So that has been addressed in the ordinance going forward, so that they're aware of that as well. There's a number of things that have gone on behind the scenes in our office since their recommendations that we've addressed in that letter. So just real quickly. So the reason that I share that with you, Commissioner, is that there are a number of things that currently exist in the ordinance, and there are the processes of appeal of staff decision. I don't have sole authority. I can render a decision and an opinion. If anybody ever disagrees with anything that takes place in our office, there's the opportunity for appeal of staff decisions, whether it be solar or whether it be subdivision, or whether we tell them that, no, you can't do this and these are the reasons why. If they don't like that, they can go through the process. Okay?
And if I'm reading this correctly, so you get your 2 years, then they ask for another 2 years, and you say, yeah, do another 2 years. And then after that, they have to go to the planning council.
Correct.
They get another 2 years, and let's say that doesn't work, they get another 2 years. I mean, I read this like you're going on in perpetuity.
For all intents and purposes, yes, but I don't know that they've ever gone down that path.
Commissioner, I think I'd just add a little bit of context. I think that's true for anything that's permitted, right?
Mhm.
Eventually, there's an expiration, and you can reapply as many times as you want.
Mhm.
You can be denied as many times as you
I
want.
just want to make sure I'm clear
Yeah.
on and understanding everything that's in here.
Yeah. So, Chairman, were you clear on that? The question you raised about Rocky Mountain Power and the engagement up front? Did we fully answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be presented before the conditional use
Yep.
permits granted, yeah. Like I say, it was just some of the discussion I had with individuals after our last meeting. And some of the nightmares that have happened, we want to make sure that in our ordinance, we cover them things, so
Yeah.
everybody's moving forward in a positive direction.
Right. Okay, the next one on here is scenic corridors, and that's an important one. Go ahead.
Deleted.
Okay.
The reason being is that there are no federally or state identified scenic byways or scenic corridors in Bannock County.
And yeah, that's one of the struggles that we had and why we flagged it, right? It's like, how do you pick out and say what it is, and then even the proximity to these? What's the proximity to be within one or adjacent to one was the language in the code, right? What does adjacent mean?
Nebulous gives you flexibility.
Yeah. So if it's not there, it's not there. We can move on. Wildlife corridors is the one after that. We just want to make sure that these are wildlife corridors that are state designated, because it makes sense to us that the ones that are the experts, which would be Idaho Fish and Game, have some deference on that.
I'll default to Tristan. She can clarify that for you and what we've done.
Yeah, so we have further defined wildlife corridors as designated by Idaho Fish and
Okay.
Game, and I actually also sent our draft ordinance to Becky Johnson with Idaho Fish and Game for her review of those sections that deal with wildlife.
And Tristan, we are engaged with Becky on
Yes.
discussion of the project, so this will all make sense to us.
Well, everywhere in Bannock County is a wildlife corridor. My backyard, I tell you.
But that's the point, right?
Oh, we hear it every time we have a meeting.
Okay. The next one's is a big one, right? This is termination and decommissioning. And I think we've made some progress and with staff, and they've incorporated some of the comments that we've made. And I can go through this, or I don't know if, Hal, you want to comment on where you've gone with that, or you want us to go through on our
Leave
comments?
that in default to Tristan as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
Yeah, my main comment really is I just need to go through it at more length, but overall, I think most of it, if not all of it, seems pretty clear and something that we would want to edit the first draft to include a more clear and concise section here.
Okay.
Any questions on that one, John?
Yes, I do have a question. On Part 2, Section 2, Part A, I think it's the second sentence, it says, "The operating company and/or landowner at the end of the 12 consecutive months shall have 6 months to complete the decommissioning, or the county will take necessary decommission steps." So I'm just wondering what that looks like. I think, and I want to understand how this relationship works. So you have your companies, which are going to assume lease land from farmers or something like that, right?
They can be lease or purchase. It can be
Okay.
both, either, but yes.
And so you make this deal, this is a separate deal, this is a private deal you guys are making with the landowners. And then you go forward and you build this thing, and then it has to be decommissioned at some point. If I read this right, the landowner could be on the hook for decommissioning this, for taking all this apart.
This language, I think, is suggested so the county has all the tools they need to get the decommissioning completed, right? So we're trying to not put the county in a box to say, somebody's got to be responsible for that, right? So the agreement that you have with the landowner should control that process, right? But if that fails, then the county can say, hey, one of you or both of you jointly, you're responsible, right? So that's a tool that gives the county the ability to
That's
make sure
right.
the
So
process is followed.
we have the ability to make the landowner take the thing apart, or to make your companies take it apart.
I'm not a lawyer, but there could be a situation in which the landowner essentially has an option in their lease to essentially claim our stuff.
I saw that too, later on, where they're getting to keep the roads or various things.
I mean, if, let's say the project goes bankrupt and the landowner can't find us, or they get sick of dealing with us, and they can have the right to essentially say, okay, I've evicted you, now your stuff is my stuff. And in that case, then they have the ownership of essentially the solar project, or the portion of the solar project that's on their land. So then if you were gonna issue the decommissioning bond, or essentially strike on it, that it would be the landowner's property at that point. In the best case scenario, none of this is sort of your responsibility.
Right.
But should it be, you have that tool to either go sort of through us or through the landowner, whoever sort of possesses the equipment.
And has your companies ever decommissioned a project?
Not yet. I mean, these projects are very long-lived, so, we're assuming a 35 to 40-year life cycle for the initial round, and then honestly, we would probably repower them at some point in the future. They have sort of a long residual value. I think, one of the things that we talk about is, there are solar panels that were put on early satellites that are still out in our sort of orbit of Earth that are still functioning. So, I mean, these things have a really long life cycle, and they have a lot of value for the community, for the grid.
But typically, you think 30 to 40 years.
Yeah, that's sort of the design life of components.
So to go further on John's question, has your company ever had a facility that is defunct that you haven't decommissioned and it's still out there as an eyesore?
I mean, all of our facilities are running sort of perfectly, so it hasn't been an issue, and we have long-term contracts on them. We have debt covenants, so I think before this ever got to you, a bank would step in and find a replacement for us to operate the facility, because they gotta sort of make their money back.
Maybe I can add on to that too. As Alex said, I mean, there has been
always the question of what would happen on this, but the agreements that backstop this, for example, specifically the revenue agreements, when we sell the power to someone, be that a utility or a commercial off-taker, those contracts are very, very ironclad about the facility being able to meet its production requirements. So should the facility ever not meet those production requirements, that entity is going to exercise its full step-in rights. And those step-in rights could include taking over the project, doing whatever maintenance. The other thing they could do is these facilities have significant salvage value. I mean, if you look at what's in a solar facility these days, it's a lot of aluminum, it's a lot of steel, it's a lot of glass, there's precious metals, in the panels. All that stuff has a very significant salvage value. So I think the industry's position is that it's good to have a clear understanding of the decommissioning process, but we think it's all, regardless of what the ordinances say, it's all backstopped by the commercial agreements that are in place for the project.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on in this section to Part B. And here you talk about an irrevocable standby letter, credit bond, et cetera, shall be required 15 years after that commercial operation date. What is the commercial operation date? Where is that in the timeline?
Go ahead, Al. So, commercial operation date is a specific term used in the industry, and that's the first date that it is providing power to the grid for revenue purposes. And so those are usually defined in a power purchase agreement. Another way of saying it that's maybe more specific to, that's not specifically tied to a revenue contract is the in-service date. That's when the utility essentially acknowledges that the power is flowing from the facility. So that would be, you finish constructing it, you've done your commissioning work, and you've said to the utility, okay, we're sending our first megawatt, and that is a specific date.
Okay, so you built this facility.
Yeah.
And then 15 years after it's been operating,
Yeah.
that's when you're required to first set out a letter of credit, bond, et cetera?
Yeah, about halfway through the operating life.
So it operates for 14 years with no such bond. And so if you were to go bankrupt in that time period, we're kind of out of luck, it sounds like.
Well, we would have debt covenants, we would have revenue contract requirements. There would be others that would step in to continue to operate.
But is there anything specified in here
Right.
about how the county would be protected?
I mean, you can speak to that, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is a balance, right? We're trying to strike a balance to making sure we have in the investment, because these are heavily loaded investments up front, right? So we're trying to strike appropriate balance on timing. Like, what's the appropriate time where you got to invest and pay for that bond when this is a 30 or 40-year lifespan, right? So these are not cheap things to have in place, right? So we're trying to strike an appropriate balance, which is where's the county adequately protected, and where's the right point in time for the developer to put down that investment, and so we think halfway through that life is a good point in time to strike that balance, and that's why we suggested 15 years from the commercial operation date. So that's the objective, right? You're trying to strike a balance.
But that does give some exposure to the county.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can back it clear up to the first point in time, and I think that's unreasonable, right? To require it right at the first.
Well, I don't know if
yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the discussion, right? That's why we're having this discussion. We've suggested 15 years because we're trying to say, this is a significant investment. We think the county is protected, because if this thing's operating, if it's not operating in that time, I think there's some other things that are gonna happen. You've got significant value, which we just talked about, right? In the selling this stuff off, or somebody's going to step in and take this over. But I think the real risk starts to come in a half-life of a project, right? You start to really get concerned, okay, we've had this operating for over a decade or more.
Yeah.
Let's start to figure out how we prepare to take this apart.
Let me tell you a little bit of my background so you understand why I'm asking this type of question.
Yeah.
So I was involved in the oil trading world for many years. And so I was around when Enron went bankrupt like that.
Yeah.
And people were walking out of the office with boxes of stuff.
Yeah.
And so this 14-year period, who's to say something doesn't happen, that this company's bankrupt and now we're on the hook for, or the landowner's on the hook for decommissioning this entire project, and maybe they can't get somebody else to take it over.
Yeah,
So
and-
it's a risk. It is a risk.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's no risk.
Yeah.
I've never, don't misunderstand, because there is a risk, right? And I think we're trying to balance a risk to incentivize them to come in and put a project in Bannock County, because Bannock County has a reasonable bond requirement, and we're trying to strike that balance. Where along that timeline do we hit it reasonable, right? So.
How much does it cost to decommission? Do you have any idea what it would cost to decommission and take apart a project like this that was on a 100-acre facility?
We'd have to go back and look, but one of the things we can do is provide, as part of the CUP, a decommissioning plan. So we can specify for, and this is very typical, it specifies sort of, here's a decommissioning timeline, plan, costs, salvage value, so you can see specifically sort of what that would take.
And that is very commonly done in the CUP process and other places we work in. So it gives you a good look of if you had to step in on a year two, as you mentioned, if you had to step in a year two, what would it cost to have someone come and take it down, and how much money would you potentially recoup off of that? So
And that's, we kind of skipped over that a little bit, but A is the plan, right? So there's a decommissioning plan that's submitted on the front end for the application process, and you address what that plan is, right? So council's they're gonna have to be satisfied that that plan makes sense, that irrespective of what the bond is or what the timing of the bond is, that you've planned whenever the project ends, that you're gonna decommission and revegetate and, restore the ground. So that plan's gotta be approved, and it's very specific what's in that plan on A. I think Commissioner Huff was gonna say something.
Yeah, talk to me about you've mentioned 2 or 3 times about your financing on the back end and some of the restrictions and things that are put in place on that. Would you elaborate on that and maybe that'll help alleviate a little bit there, because I don't understand that either, but.
I don't know, Alex, if you want to comment, I can start.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like it's probably similar to real estate development, if you gentlemen are familiar with that. So, we might start with, a full equity investment, and then once the plan is operating, bring in sort of a debt capital stack. So you would essentially have, call it like 60-40 between equity and debt. And then we'll also have tax credit investors. So essentially, there are federal tax credits, and we'll sell those to a tax credit investor. For example, Google or Facebook have a lot of free cash flow, and they'll take some of that, sort of what would be taxable income, and invest it into projects like these. And so then we have those investors. We also will have equity investors. So there's a whole capital stack, but there's essentially a lot of people the project owes money to that are invested in its long-term operations, and those are long-term investors. So they'll be in for the life of the project, 20+ years.
Yeah, I think Alex did an excellent job of summarizing. Again, there's just a lot of belt and suspenders in these projects to really keep them running. It's, as we all know, anything can happen in business, but there are a whole lot of things here that point to these projects being kept running, whether it's someone else stepping in or whatever has to happen, because that revenue is backstopping all of the investors who were stacked up on the project.
Is there a way you could stair-step that bond that wouldn't be burdensome, so that if something did go wrong in year 3, it's not the full 105% of the project like it talks about later. It's maybe 25%, and then in year 5 it goes to 50%, and you work your way up to that to provide some potential relief.
I think, this whole process, and I think I speak for Alex's company as well as Balance Rock, this is a discussion with you all, how do we get to the best ordinance we get to. We're going to be in this project's going to be in this community a long time. We want to be good neighbors. We're very, very committed to it. So we can look at a variety of different ideas. We came up with what we thought was a good suggestion, but we can definitely have those discussions. If we think it's onerous to us, we'll explain why. If you feel like you've got a risk that's uncovered, you'll explain that to us. So, yeah, we're absolutely welcome those kind of discussions. That's what we're here for, frankly.
So I think we've talked quite a bit about that one. I'm going to move on to the last few, and then we can just maybe catch any final questions if you have any. So fire mitigation is mentioned in here, and we're just suggesting that there is a plan that's submitted, and that it's provided on the front end just to make sure that there's a standard. One of the concerns that when I attended the council session, one of the concerns that was raised is kind of just the who has the experience and expertise to give a fire assessment risk and to say, hey, fire mitigation in here is sufficient, right? Is the local fire districts or even the state marshal? I mean, really, I don't know if we have the sophistication in our county, let alone Idaho, to be doing that. But to make sure we have a plan on the front end that addresses it is important, right? I think that's important to have in the ordinance, and we acknowledge that that's true. But we do want to have some sort of standard, so that it's something else that's not arbitrary on what's required for fire mitigation, right? So that's why that's left there as a point. Any questions or comments before I move on to the next two?
And to me, that would be something that, just like now, you talk to the fire chiefs or fire marshal, and you just kind of have a plan when you do the subdivision and stuff that is set. And so I would agree, that's a set standard that we're not reinventing with every fire district we have, but I also want the fire districts to assume that understanding that they have an obligation there too. I want that end of it, that they understand that they have a responsibility and
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the concern is what discretion is there without, if we're not telling them what the check boxes are that they need to look at, if that's not in the ordinance, I don't think they know what to look for on these kinds of, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but that was a comment made by council, and I think we share kind of in that sentiment, which is, there's not a lot of experience with fire mitigation on this type of thing, so if we don't set a standard, you're kind of just left out there to not know what that's going to look like.
So I do have a question, because we do have in our draft ordinance, one of the submittal requirements as part of the CUP would be a fire protection plan.
Okay.
So are you suggesting that it's just as basic as that? It just says we need one? Or does our ordinance need to actually outline, these are the things we expect to see in that fire protection plan?
Yeah, and we haven't been as specific in that. And when we first drafted this comment, we had some more specific things to maybe go down that route, and we backed that off because we just think we're getting into a sophistication that we just don't know, right?
Is there anything in the fire code with solar?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and that's where I'd say, I mean, we want our fire department to follow fire code. We don't want them to invent things, and we don't want them.
Yeah.
We want them to be specific.
The International Fire Code will be the controlling document about availability, clearances, fire.
And to me, that says it all.
Et cetera. So if that fire protection or mitigation plan followed the IFC, there's our legal contronling document.
So could we just add that in there in accordance with the IFC
We'll put that in.
guidelines?
That's my note.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that there are solar-specific sort of provisions that the IFC.
There are.
In IFC there is.
And we would follow
That
those.
would
I mean, there's no requirement that a fire department's gonna have to go purchase new equipment or
No.
fire trucks or any of that. So that's what I wanna make sure that they know
Yeah.
when they sign off on this document. And I don't want them coming to us, say, well, because you did this, you owe us a fire truck too.
So, Dustin and Alex, I'm acquainted with solar requirements for panels that are on buildings or ground mounted on a residential scale.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, through the IRC or the IBC.
Okay.
I don't know of any on a personal level, and I will do some homework, in the next week to 10 days relative to the IFC and
Yeah.
what is actual applicable
Yeah.
to a large standalone energy production facility.
Where it gets sort of interesting for large scale is things like road width, required turnarounds, to be able to get equipment in there. In terms of fighting a fire, it's going to be like not too dissimilar from, a residential. It's the same type of thing, just more of it.
Maximum distance is 300 feet or 150 feet from a point to each respective corner relative to buildings and where they would stage.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that it's going to follow very, very similar patterns. Subdivisions follow very similar patterns, et cetera, so I wouldn't think that it deviates too much past that.
And I guess probably our biggest concern would be the storage facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's good. I mean, if we can get a point of reference, if it's IFC or whatever that is, that everybody knows what we're working under, that would be helpful.
That is the current controlling document that's adopted.
Okay.
Yeah, as part of, and this usually occurs during the sort of the building permit phase for the final design, but as part of these developments, we'll often do trainings for the local fire department. Here's what you do in this case. Here's how you approach it. Here are the systems that we've put in place, both the active and passive fire control systems, just so they know what to do. In some cases, energy storage systems are designed with essentially a spigot hookup, and you just pop a hose on there and just flood the container with water. There are things like, they can put a sort of gas detector in to make sure that, the pressure inside the container. So, essentially making sure they understand order of operations for fighting a fire with battery storage and solar. And then, we specifically procure and design our systems to actively manage sort of any thermal runaway. Newer energy storage systems, which will be what we install here, don't actually burn. You won't have open flames. They can get hot, but not hot enough to propagate from sort of one cell to another, so you won't have sort of a big meltdown. And then we'll have things like internal fire extinguishers or liquid-cooled systems that prevent sort of any large-scale fire. And we're continuously operating, monitoring them, so we can shut the whole system down the instant something sort of gets above a certain temperature level.
Thank you.
The next one is related to just small scale in this ordinance. There was an exception for height. What we were asking for is an exception for height limit for agrivoltaics. And agrivoltaics is when you're doing agriculture below the panels, right? So I think the best example is sheep, grazing sheep out there. And even for small systems, I think you're going to have a problem for having a 7-foot height requirement. So that was just a suggestion based off of what's actually out there in practice and making something that's workable in the ordinance. So we just made a note there on that one. And the last one is
Before we
Go
move
ahead.
on, is there a specific height requirement you think would be appropriate, or?
You would know that more than me.
Do you want, in some of the other ordinance we've looked at, I mean, they can be as high as 20 to 30 feet in the ordinance, but what's standard with trackers in the industry is probably no higher than like 12 to 14 feet. When a tracker is at, because remember, it's moving, so when it's at its full tilt, its standard is around 12 to 14 feet for utility scale projects. With agrivoltaics, as we said, sometimes you need to raise that up a little bit higher so sheep can get under there or other things.
So 20 feet?
So 20 feet would probably be fine. I think that's higher than, we may need, but you want flexibility. Like I said, what we've seen in other ordinances, they've had up to 35 feet for agrivoltaics.
Up to how much?
35 in the other ordinances for agrivoltaics, but that might be assuming you're going to grow crops or something, which we're not looking at doing. Alex, did you want to comment?
Yeah, we're not specifically looking at growing crops, but other sort of uses that we've seen are row crops underneath, so you could be doing corn.
I guess
or
the
wheat.
landowner you're leasing from might grow crops.
It's possible. Sheep, depending on the size of the sheep. And then we've seen things like, there's these hop trellises, so they're sort of triangular shaped, and then they'll put solar panels on top of those, and we can send you pictures. Those can be quite high.
Yeah, if you've seen hops growing, I mean, they grow up 15 feet. I mean, they're pretty tall, right? So
Yeah,
you're going to do
they're
something
vines.
like that. I don't think we're going to be growing hops in South County,
Well,
but
they're trying to in Rexburg.
they are doing it over here more than I've seen in the past.
I will say it's an exciting trend because it's a nice compatibility of solar and ag,
Yeah.
where
Well,
those things can
I won't be
coexist.
in favor of going too high. I'll just tell you that. So as we look at that.
So we did edit that section and just made it consistent, because there were other sections of the ordinance that just said director's discretion on height. And so that's what we have it listed as currently, knowing that whoever the applicant is could come propose their use, tell us what height they need, and then the director would be able to evaluate that and determine if that is too high or if it would work for the surrounding uses in the area. And then our use charts also have a maximum height for any structure of 35 feet, except for your industrial zones and commercial zones where it's actually just dictated by your building code. So we do also have some of that just already in the ordinance for.
Well, I just look at the billboards on the interstate, and I don't want a bunch of billboards
We won't be
in the
that
middle
high.
of somebody's field blocking somebody's view or something. I mean, we took the scenic out of there, but it's still Idaho, and you still want to see the mountains, and you still want to
Yeah.
have a direction.
We won't get there. I mean, one of the things is the higher you get, the more steel you need to support that height, the bigger the steel. I just anecdotally, I'm in I'll just say a robust discussion with my engineers about how high to put solar modules for some sheep grazing that we're going to do in a project in Washington State. And these sheep happen to be the largest sheep they make. They're Columbia, I don't know, Rambouillet. They're big sheep. They're like 4 feet.
You ever been to Texas?
Doesn't count. So anyway, but it's like, can we raise it a foot? And my engineers are screaming bloody murder, how much it's going to cost. So we really want to keep them as low as we can, because
Okay, I
it's millions of dollars in steel.
30
costs.
feet seems a long ways in the air to me.
It is, and I can't think of anything that we need
If I'm
to do.
driving down I-15 or on the highway, I want to see more than just a billboard that has nothing on it.
That's
You
right.
could say, hey, there's sheep under there. That's pretty cool.
I think we would agree with that, and the beauty of solar is that it's low-lying.
Yeah, it's very low to the ground.
The last one's an important point. We just want to make sure that we have an ordinance that's clear on zoning compatibility and use with ag lands, that we are able to, use solar and use these commercial scale projects with agricultural land. So as long as that's specified clearly, and then we've probably just, said large scale and small scale uses on that ag land, I think that would be our ask.
And I have a question on that, and I'm going to talk to our assessor,
Yeah.
because what is this zoned? I mean, what's the tax base off this, and how's that going to benefit everybody around and stuff? And so, I don't know what it is throughout the country or throughout Idaho, but
Yeah, that's clear, and we came prepared to address that, if you'd
Okay.
like us to speak on that for a few minutes. So there is an exemption for these projects in code, in state code, there's an exemption, but then there's a revenue that's generated. So there's a fee that's generated on the revenue that's produced, and it's 3.5%. Right, so it's just like any other utility. Idaho Power pays that back to the county, and 100% of it will go to the state. It's collected by the state, and it comes back to
that
Bannock
scared
County.
me.
Yeah. But it's the same. It's the same as the utility, though. That's how it works. So
Yeah.
so the county gets 100% of it.
So this is just like cable and everything else.
Yeah.
That's right.
As the city of Incan, we got a fee.
Yeah, that's right. So the question that I had, and we can run to ground on how you budgeted on this end, is the pot of money it goes to locally. We'll get that clarified when it comes here. But just so you know, there is tax on it, right? It's just collected a little bit differently. It's not collected to the county. It's collected to the state and comes to the county.
Okay. But ag ground is pretty cheaply taxed compared to everything else.
And we can show you the projected revenue numbers, right? I mean, I think you're going to be pleased with what that number is.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm happy to share, we did some initial estimates on the 300 megawatt project that's on about 2,400 acres. And our tax consultant said it was about 1.7 million per year. Projected over 40 years, I think that was about 64 million in total, or 67 million in total. And then we use the state code to break out the buckets of where that goes to, and we can send you that information. And we also have a website out there that details some of that. That's estimate at this point.
And one of the great points with the way that revenue generation works for the county in these types of situations is there's not depreciation, right? So as that life of the project goes on and the property value depreciates, the property, the structures that are built on top of it depreciates. The 3.5% number stays the same. So that's a good place to be when you're in 10, 20 years down the road, right? You're
Okay,
still getting the percentage.
so let's go back, and this property's leased. Who's taxed? The leasee
operator.
or the leaser?
The operator.
Yeah, the project is taxed.
Yeah.
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, the farmer who you're getting the land from, he's getting taxed, property tax at the agricultural rate, but you guys who are generating all this power are paying this 3.5% fee, and that's the additional revenue.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that
So
should.
the farmer isn't suddenly, now we're gonna say, oh, you got a solar panel there?
No.
Well, that's worth, much more.
No, it's specifically, these projects it would be specifically exempted in code, so he doesn't have that.
Mhm.
Also, the way our leases work, we do what's triple net, so we pay all of the property taxes, all the utilities. Essentially, we pay fully our way for that piece of ground that we're leasing. The owner, the farmer, is not on the
So
hook.
if I had a farm of 100 acres and
Yeah.
I lease it to you guys, my property tax bill goes to you now?
Essentially.
Well, I like that idea.
Yeah.
So if I had 100 acres.
Yeah.
Dustin, you said in code, these projects are exempt?
Yeah, and I can give you the reference, and we can talk about it after sometime too. So it is Idaho Code 63, 3503. Talks about solar revenue tax, and this is in lieu of property tax, right? So you're familiar with how that works. So it's exempt under section 63-602JJ. It's assessed centrally by the state tax commission, and then it's provided back to the county where the property is located, which in this context obviously Bannock. So that's the way it works. It's currently in Idaho Code. The process is set there to use, and that's what we'd use.
Well, I'm glad you clarified that, because as I was looking through some things last night, there are several county ordinances where they have an impact fee.
Yeah.
And so if we have this coming on the other side, then I'm not very inclined to look at that path, so that's good.
Well, we're ready to stand for any other outstanding questions or concerns that you have, and appreciate the time.
No, we just need to see the ordinance and see what happens as we go forward from that.
Yeah.
Before we finish.
Go ahead.
I'd like to just ask Tristan to address time frame as required by ordinance or statute, shall we, relative to the next processes that will be coming to council and then to commission.
Great.
So our 180-day moratorium, the last day is April 9th. So we are wanting an adopted ordinance before that date. My goal is March 25th would be the drop dead last date that commissioners would see it as a public hearing. So we have our notice to the Idaho State Journal drafted, will be sent off this afternoon for a public hearing for council to hear our current draft that we have January 17th at their next meeting. We are wondering if you would like to see it as a work session prior to council, seeing it as a public hearing, or if you would like a work session after they have their comments and edits, or both.
Let's do it after, in my
Okay.
opinion, so that they have their comments and we look at that instead of rehashing. So let's send it to them first, just go through that process, and then we'll have a work session after that and talk about it, and then put it up for public hearing.
Perfect.
So that said, it would be the week of, the last week of January, anticipating somewhere, what, 24th?
Last week, like the first week of February. We have IAC.
Okay.
We're going on Sunday and we'll be back on Thursday. We're gonna have a short work session on Friday.
Okay.
So that's that last week in January, first day in February.
That's part of the reason why before we leave,
Yeah.
Mr. Manwaring's aware of what the next timeframe and schedule will be, conversations for refinement if they do come, and making you aware of a potential schedule against your schedules, et cetera. So we'll be anticipating that first week of February to be in front of you again.
That'd work out better.
Okay, thank you.
So just to make sure I'm on the same page, January 17th is the council date.
That's our first.
Yeah, public hearing date. That will be published in the paper for the public hearing. And then we would be anticipating to be back in front of, well, you would have it back in front of you.
We'd have a work session.
A work session.
Yeah.
And then the public hearing for us after that.
Okay, so you do the work session on the
Be on
first part of
Thursday.
February?
Thursday, the first week in February.
Okay.
That said, we will be forwarding that to you, Dustin, and
Okay.
anticipating your attendance on the 17th.
Okay.
Okay.
As well as anyone else of the general public, et cetera, to review and discuss the pros and cons of this ordinance.
What would be helpful back to you at that work session that you would do in February?
Honestly, it's just getting the input from the council.
Okay.
If they make changes and stuff like that, I'd like them to go ahead and look at it first, and then when we come back, if we make changes, we have a day.
Okay. Sounds good.
What's going to happen, well, in my mind, we've discussed the overall. Now there's going to be particular points and specifics that will be hashed, and those will then be presented to them.
Great.
They will do their specifics and hash, and then we'll have it refined and a document ready for second public hearing.
Okay.
And the second public hearing could be on that Tuesday after that. We have our work session and do the public hearing on the Tuesday after that. So the second week in February, that Tuesday, it'd be when we'd sign everything.
I like it, you're just cruising along.
No, we appreciate everybody's work and efforts on this. I mean, something that's coming new to our county. We're not trying to take anybody's land rights away or stuff, but we just want to do it the right way and make sure that we move to the future with a plan.
Yeah, we're extremely supportive of that and appreciate your time, appreciate staff's time on this as well, so thank you.
Yeah, well, and thank you again. I know you recognized Mayor Nielsen here earlier, but just want to acknowledge he's here, and that's a big deal.
Well, I was going to invite him up, but we wanted this meeting to be a little shorter.
Yeah, I'd like to let you guys know that this clarified a lot for me, and I really appreciate your presentation and that you're able to answer all the questions and so on. So this really clarified a lot in my mind, and also how much I appreciate staff working on this.
Yeah, it's been great, and like I said, we're all available for any questions anytime that anybody has, and happy to help. Oh, yeah, so that is one thing that we talked about doing, for anybody that's interested. We're going to do some Solar 101 kind of presentations, probably just a remote presentation that's offered for anybody that wants to learn more about how solar works. So we can share that link with anybody that's interested in that going forward, and just so you have some good basis for how this works.
Yeah.
Well,
What a
project
it
is.
If you'd send that to Christie
Sure.
Davenport,
that'd
and
be
then
great.
she could send it out to the commission.
Great.
You send to our planning and development email to Marge.
Okay, that's good.
And then she'll
Yep.
distribute it to staff.
Okay, that's great. We'll
Thank
do
you
it.
very much.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, Christie, you're up.
Christie Clauser, Comptroller. First item I have for the board is the annual road and bridge report. This just runs through revenues, expenditures by certain categories, and then any balances.
I don't think this
So I guess if 2 commissioners would like to review it and possibly sign it, I would appreciate that.
I read through it last night. Looked good. Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the report, accept it and approve it.
Also-
And authorize signature,
I have to submit it online.
and then authorize electronic signature or submission.
Okay. And that's the road and bridge one.
Yeah.
Okay. But it still has a line here for all 3 of us.
And then if you'll give me that, I can get Jason's signature real quick. And then I'll get a copy to Christie.
Okay, we have a motion to approve this. All in favor, say aye.
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 Next item I have is the FY23 Indigent Defense Expenditure Report. This reports expenditures for public defense, Office of Conflict, and the grants. And it just runs through, first section is all the expenditures. The second section is for the formula grant, and the third section is for the workload compliance. Those have to be money spent within those categories. And then this has already been submitted. I thought I would have the copy with Jason's signature because it has to be done electronically. But then there's the signature page for the board. So if I can get the signature page from you, then I will get that submitted to the correct parties, and I'll get Christie a copy of that as well.
Okay. Motion on this one?
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we approve the report as presented.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. With that being said, is there anything else?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, Mr. Chair, in reviewing with counsel, legal counsel, the limelight issue, we may be able to, if you're comfortable with it, the record that's been provided, have the commission have a discussion today in an open meeting, and then I can scribe and we can move forward.
I don't need the rest of that. Just
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, you're fine. We can move forward today, or if you'd like, and you'd rather wait to make sure we're organized, we can do that next Thursday. But the record that was provided by legal counsel would be all we need to go through today and have you guys make your decisions in an open meeting.
I'd prefer to wait to read, I haven't read the whole thing. I'd prefer to read the whole thing.
And we had people here to hear. And so I don't want it to appear that we're going behind somebody.
Yeah, I just wanted to present the options. Brian and I talked, and I think
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there was people here to hear and listen and participate, or not participate, but at least hear it, and I'd hate to go on and have something that we've said, no, we're not gonna do it, go ahead and leave, and then turn around and do it. That just doesn't make any sense. So we'll continue with Thursday.
Okay. All right, that's it.
All right.